Ezekiel 16. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, confront Jerusalem with her detestable practices and say, This is what the sovereign Lord says to Jerusalem. Your ancestry and birth were in the land of the Canaanites. Your father was an Amorite, and your mother a Hittite. On the day you were born, your cord was not cut, nor were you washed with water to make you clean, nor were you rubbed with salt or wrapped in cloths. No one looked on you with pity or had compassion enough to do any of these things for you. Rather, you were thrown out into the open field, for on the day you were born you were despised. Then I passed by and saw you kicking about in your blood, and as you lay there in your blood, I said to you, Live. I made you grow like a plant of the field. You grew and developed and entered puberty. Your breasts had formed and your hair had grown, yet you were stark naked. Later I passed by, and when I looked at you and saw you were old enough for love, I spread the corner of my garment over you and covered your naked body. I gave you my solemn oath and entered into a covenant with you, declares the sovereign Lord, and you became mine. I bathed you with water and washed the blood from you and put ointments on you. I clothed you with an embroidered dress and put sandals of fine leather on you. I dressed you in fine linen and covered you with costly garments. I adorned you with jewelry. I put bracelets on your arms and a necklace around your neck, and I put a ring on your nose, earrings on your ears, and a beautiful crown on your head. So you were adorned with gold and silver. Your clothes were of fine linen and costly fabric and embroidered cloth. Your food was honey, olive oil, and the finest flour. You became very beautiful and rose to be a queen, and your fame spread across the nations on account of your beauty, because the splendor I had given you made your beauty perfect, declares the sovereign Lord. But you trusted in your beauty and used your fame to become a prostitute. You lavished your favors on anyone who passed by, and your beauty became his. You took some of your garments to make gaudy high places where you carried on your prostitution. You went to him, and he possessed your beauty. You also took the fine jewelry I gave you, the jewelry made of my gold and silver, and you made for yourself male idols and engaged in prostitution with them. And you took your embroidered clothes to put on them, and you offered my oil and incense before them. Also the food I provided for you, the flour, olive oil, and honey I gave you to eat, you offered as fragrant incense before them. That is what happened, declares the sovereign Lord. And you took your sons and daughters whom you bore to me and sacrificed them as food to the idols. Was your prostitution not enough? You slaughtered my children and sacrificed them to the idols. In all your detestable practices and your prostitution, you did not remember the days of your youth, when you were naked and bare, kicking about in your blood. Woe, woe to you, declares the sovereign Lord. In addition to all your other wickedness, you built a mound for yourself and made a lofty shrine in every public square. At every street corner you built your lofty shrines and degraded your beauty, spreading your legs with increasing promiscuity to anyone who passed by. You engaged in prostitution with the Egyptians, your neighbors with large genitals, and aroused my anger with your increasing promiscuity. So I stretched out my hand against you and reduced your territory. I gave you over to the greed of your enemies, the daughters of the Philistines, who were shocked by your lewd conduct. You engaged in prostitution with the Assyrians too, because you were insatiable, and even after that, you were still not satisfied. Then you increased your promiscuity to include Babylonia, a land of merchants, but even with this, you were not satisfied. I am filled with fury against you, declares the sovereign Lord. When you do all these things, acting like a brazen prostitute, when you built your mounds at every street corner and you made your lofty shrines in every public square, you were unlike a prostitute because you scorned payment. You adulterous wife, you prefer strangers to your own husband. All prostitutes receive gifts, but you give gifts to all your lovers, bribing them to come to you from everywhere for your illicit favors. So in your prostitution, you are the opposite of others. No one runs after you for your favors. You're the very opposite, for you give payment and none is given to you. Therefore, you prostitute, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Because you poured out your lust and exposed your naked body and your promiscuity with your lovers, and because of all your detestable idols, and because you gave them your children's blood, therefore I'm going to gather all your lovers with whom you found pleasure, those you loved as well as those you hated. I will gather them against you from all around and will strip you in front of them, and they will see you stark naked. I will sentence you to the punishment of women who commit adultery and who shed blood. I will bring on you the blood vengeance of my wrath and jealous anger. Then I will deliver you into the hands of your lovers, and they will tear down your mounds and destroy your lofty shrines. By the way, what's he talking about here? Is he talking about physical prostitutes? Is he talking about, a natural woman? No. What's a woman in the word, guys? A woman is a church. Zion is described as a pure and virtuous woman. And then there are other women who are described as, for example, a harlot and the prostitutes bore out of her. He's talking to his church. A while ago, we had someone who was in the assembly who would say things like, "Oh, thank God I was never promiscuous or a prostitute or a crackhead." Yeah, you were. All of us were. You think God's more concerned about, physical prostitution, or do you think he's more concerned about the adultery against him and the prostitution to the world? What's more detestable to him? Which one did he establish in order to describe and explain the other? So don't get puffed up. We've all been prostitutes. Did you bring your children to doctors? Did you go and defer to experts in your life? Well, guess what? You've been a prostitute. Did you binge watch on YouTube many teachers that told you what your itching ears wanted to hear? Did you go to prostitute churches and listen to them instead of just returning to the Lord in the purity of his word and trust that he could minister truth to you? Did you go off on your own understanding of what the world told you needed to do in your life? Well, guess what? We're all prostitutes. No one's better than the other because you didn't sleep around. That was established to help you understand the other. And I'm quite sure that God could clean up a prostitute, a natural prostitute, faster than he could or would someone who is prostituting themselves to the world and doesn't have a heart for him. And as a matter of fact, I know that because Jesus said to the Pharisees, prostitutes and tax collectors are getting into the kingdom of heaven before you. Don't misunderstand the heart of God. Those people on the street are not more disgusting than the well-dressed people at the pulpits. It's the other way around, guys. The stench of those people at the pulpits is worse than the stench of someone sitting on the street, okay? Like, do I need to say it like that? He can clean them up faster than he can clean up the others because they'll have a heart for him faster than those at the pulpits. I'm reminded of what God was telling the people regarding, and I think actually he was speaking to Samuel regarding King Saul. King Saul is kind of described as like, he was probably a good-looking guy and very strong and everything else. King David was like a little shrimp. He was a kid. And yet Samuel was told, don't judge him by the way he looks. And don't judge King Saul by the way he looks. I'm giving this title to one who has a heart for me. I can work with that. Verse 39. Then I will deliver you into the hands of your lovers, and they will tear down your mounds and destroy your lofty shrines. They will strip you of your clothes and take your fine jewelry and leave you stark naked. They will bring a mob against you who will stone you and hack you to pieces with their swords. They will burn down your houses and inflict punishment on you in the sight of many women. I will put a stop to your prostitution, and you will no longer pay your lovers. Then my wrath against you will subside, and my jealous anger will turn away from you. I will be calm and no longer angry. What's the direction of things? Like, what's the order of things that God does? He brings his wrath, and then his wrath will subside. Why? Because his wrath was needed in order for these people to stop their prostitution. This is what's going to happen during the Antichrist reign. Because you did not remember the days of your youth, but enraged me with all these things, I will surely bring down on your head what you have done, declares the sovereign Lord. Did you not add lewdness to all your other detestable practices? I was talking with a very dear friend, someone I really love and care about today, and she was kind of bothered by some of the things that I was saying about what's going on in Israel and that sort of thing, until we really had a conversation about, hey, this is what God has said. Like, this is what he has said. And so do you believe that if God's sending anything, if he's sending something, that if something is happening in your life, that God is sending it and that he's sending it for his reasons, because that's what the word says. And it's very difficult, some of the things that I say, because people accuse me of being racist or anti-Semitic. This is not anti-Semitic. This is not about race. This is about what God is doing to clean up his people, to cause them to turn to him. And he doesn't just do it to ethnic Jews. He does it to what an ethnic Gentile? What is that? It's not about ethnicity, guys. He does it to all of us. And he does it when we're not listening. And it's the only way to clean us up. God does not bring grief on us willingly, but he brings it to clean us up. Everyone who quotes this proverb will quote this proverb about you, like mother, like daughter. You are a true daughter of your mother. Ooh, what is he talking about? Does he talk about that in Revelation? Babylon the Great, the mother of all prostitutes. Same language, guys. You are a true daughter of your mother who despised her husband and her children, and you are a true sister of your sisters who despised their husbands, and their children. Your mother was a Hittite and your father an Amorite. Your older sister was Samaria, who lived to the north of you with her daughters, and your younger sister, who lived to the south of you with her daughters, was Sodom. You not only followed their ways and copied their detestable practices, but in all your ways you soon became more depraved than they. As surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, your sister Sodom and her daughters never did what you and your daughters have done. Yep, that's exactly right. Even when Jesus was here and he was casting out spirits and he was going to the different towns, performing all of these miracles, and then those towns did not repent, what did he say? He said it's going to be worse for these towns than it will be for Sodom and Gomorrah, Tyre and Sidon. Wickedness has increased, and yet we sit around in our counterfeit churches and counterfeit small groups and go, oh, they're so disgusting. They're so wicked. Oh, look at what they were doing in Sodom. Well, what did I tell you? What can God clean up more quickly? Someone engaging in that kind of behavior, in prostitution, he can clean them up before these teachers, before this puffed up, sinful, wicked, that you don't even recognize that it's wicked. Have we not been looking at that our whole lives and going, oh, this is so godly. Yes, this is so godly here in these counterfeit churches. Oh, yes, this is what godliness looks like. Wearing your Sunday best, being a hypocrite. But those people on the street, right? Need I remind you that he sent his servants outside of the kingdom to go grab those people off the street and bring them into the wedding banquet. Now, this was the sin of your sister Sodom. Listen, she and her daughters were arrogant. Arrogant, that's the sin. Arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. Complacent, guys. Complacent Christianity. They did not help the poor and the needy. They were haughty and did detestable things before me. Therefore I did away with them, as you have seen. Samaria did not commit half of the sins you did. You have done more detestable things than they, and have made your sisters seem righteous by all these things you've done. And yet, they think that Israel is going to bear all of this stuff. Ethnic Israel. Oh, no, it's going to be on them, right? Because they're the wicked ones. We're the righteous ones. Ha! In for a wake-up call, guys. Bear your disgrace, for you have furnished some justification for your sisters, because your sins were more vile than theirs. They appear more righteous than you. So then be ashamed and bear your disgrace, for you have made your sisters appear righteous. However, I will restore the fortunes of Sodom and her sisters, and of Samaria and her daughters, and your fortunes along with them, so that you may bear your disgrace and be ashamed of all you have done in giving them comfort. And your sisters, Sodom with her daughter, and Samaria and with her daughters, will return to what they were before, and you and your daughters will return to what you were before. You would not even mention your sister Sodom on the day of your pride, because your wickedness was uncovered. Even so, you are now scorned by the daughters of Edom and all her neighbors, and the daughters of the Philistines, all those around you who despise you. You will bear the consequences of your lewdness and your detestable practices, declares the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says. I will deal with you as you deserve, because you have despised my oath by breaking the covenant. Yet I will remember the covenant I made with you in the days of your youth, and I will establish an everlasting covenant with you. Then you will remember your ways and be ashamed when you receive your sisters, both those who are older than you and those who are younger. I will give them to you as daughters, but not on the basis of my covenant with you. So I will establish my covenant with you, and you will know that I am the Lord. Then when I make atonement for you, for all you have done, you will remember and be ashamed, and never again open your mouth because of your humiliation, declares the sovereign Lord. Oh, but that's not nice, is it? That's not kind. Nope, he speaks the truth. And his love and his kindness does not have to be the murderous coddling that is done in the world and in counterfeit Christianity. Is this not kind? He says he's going to restore, even though you don't even deserve it, even though I don't deserve it. Now, here's why he's brought me here. Because as you know, I'm going through something right now. I'm going through something that is really scary. God told me to let go of my 3 very lucrative careers, and I did it. God told me to give money even when I had no money coming in, and I did it. God told me when someone tried to sue me, who was trying to slander me, who had stolen from me, to give them what they were asking for, and I did it. And I lived on my savings, and I lived on my retirement, and I continued to pay for a building I'm not using because God didn't tell me to get rid of that building. And I continued to pray, when would you like me to sell the building? Because this is the last bit that I have to live on. I have 4 months worth of living expenses in my account right now. And I'm not telling you this for any reason. You don't need to send money in. God is doing something with me. I'm sharing these details with you to help you to understand what it is that I'm going through and what God's servants go through. And that this is not like some simple thing like, oh, I'm independently wealthy and so, I just have nothing better to do but make videos all day. No, I gave up everything that I had to do what I'm doing with you. And I gave it up according to what God said. And it wasn't my idea, guys. I gave it up according to what he told me to do. This field is not of me. What's it going to be? Are you going to trust me? Are you going to believe me? And now I'm on the last bit of money until my time is up here. I have 2 more years here. And I have just enough in that building to live on for those 2 years. No more, no less. Well, potentially less. I don't know. If a crisis came up, I don't think I'd be able to pay for it. But it doesn't matter. God will make a way. The position that I'm in right now is that I have 4 months, and that building has not even gone into escrow yet. No one's put an offer on it, and it's a specific kind of building. It's not like a typical commercial building. It has specific characteristics that a person would have to be looking for that type of a building. And so the position that I'm in is like, Lord, I've been a planner this whole time. Like, I've been pretty responsible. I mean, I was irresponsible with money, but I had the money to be irresponsible with, I guess, is what you could say. I never really lived outside of my means. And as you know, I came from poverty. I lived on the street at one time, and then I had incredible wealth. So to go from that to this is pretty hard. But I waited, and I continued to pray, and that's completely opposite to what I would do. In the world, I was always planning. I always made sure that I had a cushion in case there was a crisis and, everything else. And I was a good saver. Well, I didn't realize that I was a good saver so that I could live on the money that I saved and do what he has me doing right now. It's scary. It's really scary. And I kept praying all last year. I mean, even the year before, asking him, should I sell the building? Should I sell the building? I'm going to wait till you give me the go-ahead. And he gave me the go-ahead, but he waited till the end. He didn't let me rest on my planning and the work of my hands. And so it's a scary thing for me to be going through right now, because now I'm at that point where it's not just whether or not I'd be able to pay the mortgage on the building, it's also my home. Like, is he going to make me lose my home? And so he just keeps working me into, there's nothing like when you're in this position, you don't have a way to plan. There's nothing to plan for. You just have to sit and rend your heart to whatever it is that God's doing right now in the moment, because you don't know what he's going to do tomorrow. And you have to deal with all of your fears and your concerns. And it's important. What he's doing right now with me is important. This is not a plea for anybody else to fix this situation for me. I want you to know that. This is not a problem for God. This is a situation he sent, that he put me in order to purify me, in order to make me spotless and refine me, because I put money as an idol. And there are many reasons for that. I mean, I could give you my list of reasons. Well, I grew up in poverty. There was always instability. I lived on the street. I never wanted that to happen again. Those are legit reasons, but they're not excuses in God's sight. He expects me to trust him, and he expects me to take only the manna that I need for the day and double up on Friday so I can observe a Sabbath. You know what I'm saying? He expects me to trust that he's going to take care of me. He expects me to give to the poor. He expects me to do the things that he has had me doing, even when there's no money coming in. You know what I mean? Because I'm not supposed to trust in the money that's coming in. I'm not supposed to trust in the work of my own hands. I'm supposed to trust in him. And one of the things that he was telling me today is, I'm not going to pay for what your lovers did to you. Okay, let's understand what I'm saying. I'm not saying my physical lovers. I'm talking about my idols. I'm using the language of Ezekiel 16, okay? Now let me use a human example. You ever had, or maybe heard of, maybe you had a friend, right? You had a friend that went through this. They were in a relationship and they had a very jealous partner or someone who had a lot of baggage. I had a boyfriend like that at one time. And he had all of this baggage of having been cheated on and all this stuff, right? Who even knows if it was true? Like, who knows? But it was like his excuse to get overly jealous and overly possessive and overly I'm going to say bipolar, but I'm not talking about the diagnosis. I'm talking about over the top and, snooping through my phone and my emails and it was so incredibly stressful. And a person like that overwhelms you with their issues. They make all of their baggage your problem and your problem to sort through for them and to make sure that you don't touch any of their issues by doing things that are going to trigger them, that you behave just so that they can feel secure, which is a lie because they never feel secure. They came into it without security. So you become their idol and they become yours because now you're on eggshells. You don't want to upset anything, and you never know what you're going to get. It's like the alcoholic dad, right? You hear the sound of his car pulling up in the driveway, and you're like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen right now. Well, that's a lot of the time how we treat God. We bring in all of the baggage from the idols that we handed ourselves over to and act like it's his problem. So I was taking this up with him because I thought, well, that's a little harsh. I mean, that's what you're saying to me, okay? But Lord, like I gave up this and I gave up that, and like I think that I understand. Like I'm going to rend my heart to what you're saying to me, but also that seems a little unfair. Help me understand, because I know you're not unfair. I know you're righteous, not me. And he started to show me that if I had just trusted from the very beginning, never mind my issues, guys. Never mind the fact that my dad did such and such and I grew up in this unstable, abusive environment. Never mind all that. God knows that. God will deal with that. God will vindicate. He will heal. He will do what God does. And the word says that those who sin with knowledge receive a large lashing, and those who sin without knowledge receive a smaller lashing. But guess what? They still receive a lashing. There's a lot of stuff I did in stupidity and ignorance. There's a lot of things that I did that I thought that I was doing the right thing. I thought, having had a child 2 days after my 17th birthday, that going to school and striving to get an education was the right thing to do, because that was all that was what I heard in the world. It's not like it was easy for me. It's not like it was a cakewalk and fun. I worked really hard to get my doctorate while raising a child. And it was wrong. It was the wrong thing to do, because God gave me a precious little girl and I should have been home with her. And I should have just trusted that he was going to make a way for me to be with her. But I didn't even know that was something I could trust, And yet I still receive a lashing. And because of those fears and concerns that I had, I handed myself over to even more idolatry of knowledge, more idolatry of men, more idolatry of you name it. Even my beauty. I was a very strong, physically strong woman, emotionally strong woman, and I was a beautiful woman. God gave me all of that, and I trusted in it. And now he's broken me down every which way so that I could understand how fleeting that is. I laid in bed day after day after day, 22-hour days when I was sick. It's very difficult to get that muscle back. You have so much atrophy in your body. He took it away. He took a lot away so that I could understand and be ashamed of my idolatry. And so what he's saying to me today, as I'm calling out to him, and I'm like, but, is, if you had trusted me from the beginning, you'd be very strong in the spirit right now. Like, you'd be able to trust me even more right now. You would have been a lot further along in your faith. Your life would have gone a completely different direction, but it didn't because of your decisions. And just like I kept paying the price for that boyfriend and the lovers that he had or whatever, the idols that he had in his life, just like he kept overwhelming me with that, and I was paying the price of that, God's not going to pay the price for the many lovers, for the many idols I had in my life before him. I'm going to have to sort through that. And I'm going to have to go through certain things in order for that bondage to be broken, in order for those strongholds to be broken. And that's part of what he's doing right now. And I'm going through it. And like I brought you through the whole thing that we experienced when my grandson was being born, and that stronghold needing to be broken. And I want you to recognize that each day he's doing something different in me. Each day I have to set aside all of the distractions, because believe me, I want to distract right now because I'm like, it's hard to sit in my skin. I have to set those distractions aside and I have to lean into, all right, what are you teaching me right now? I think I shared with you like last week sometime I was working in my garage. I was just kind of going stir crazy and putting the threshold in, installing the threshold in my garage. And the whole time I'm like grumbling against him. And I knew it. And I couldn't even stop myself. I was just like in this like compulsive grumbling. And he reminded me about my mom, like my poor mom. She just didn't have like basic skills. So like if the doorknob got loose on the door, instead of grabbing a screwdriver to tighten the doorknob, it was like, the door just doesn't work anymore. I think it might also be partly that generation taught to like, maybe some of the women not very self-sufficient, okay? Regardless, it used to irritate me to no end. And in other ways, she was very self-sufficient. I mean, this is a woman who rode her bike to go cook fries in a kitchen to support her 5 children because of the deadbeat fathers. That's a tough woman to do that almost to the age of 50. But God reminded me about how irritated I would get about stuff like this, and I would go over and I'd be like, okay, what do you need fixed in the house or whatever? But everything was like a federal case, and it was just all that needed to be done was to pick up the screwdriver and tighten the screw, pick up a wrench and tighten the shower head. Simple things. Well, how easily I judged my mother, right? And what he said to me is, your grumbling right now is as annoying as your mother's federal cases were to you. It's annoying to me. So basically, knock it off. Every day, God is dealing with me like that. And every day, I'm listening. And every day, this lump of clay is being molded into something different. And every day, he's plucking out those idols, those splinters from my skin. So I want you to recognize the example that I'm setting for you because, as I'm sure you know, it's not like super comfy to expose your sin and talk about these things for everybody to hear. I talk about them for a reason because none of the worthless shepherds are they're not exposing any of their sin to help you grow. They're not, as the word says, confessing their sins to bring you along for their example of living in the covenant, are they? And it's actually important that you have that example. You probably didn't have that example in your parents either, and that's because of the increase in wickedness. Your parents probably were not transparent. They didn't, bring you along and shepherd you. Most people had parents who would never admit to their own struggles, who set themselves up as idols and gods. And in doing so, you either continued to set them up as an idol in your life, or you totally rejected God altogether because you saw the hypocrisy in that. And so this is important for God's shepherds to share these things with you so that you have a real life example of what it means to live in the covenant and receive God's ministry. It's interesting, when I wrote Heart Known series, a lot of times at the end of the exercise, I'll tell you, now sit and receive God's ministry. Listen to how he's dealing with you. Listen to what he's saying about why he sent this particular experience. And the biggest question that I've gotten with regard to Heart Known series is, what does that even mean? Oh my goodness, I thought it was self-explanatory. And in asking that question, I'm not making fun of anyone. I'm letting you know, I'm realizing how bad it is. How bad it is that people don't even realize that they can have a personal relationship with Christ through the Holy Spirit, in which Christ is molding them into tools for different purposes. No, we go to therapists who pitch this lie of whole person, individualized treatment. Guess what? The one who set you apart for a purpose is the only one who knows what that purpose is. And he's the only one who knows the specific things that need to be taught and learned for you to become that purpose, right? That language that the field of psychology is using, and I know it well because that was my training. That language that they're using is an attempt to covet and usurp what only God can do in your life. If he set you apart for a purpose, what individualized plan do they have? They have no understanding at all. At all. Not even the best of them. Not even the ones who actually have a heart by the time they're done with their training. Because usually by the end of your training, you've seen so many disgusting things. You've been trained to be heartless, worthless, and jaded. Just like every other field in science, you have been trained to do things according to what insurance is going to pay. At the end of the day, I don't care what they say about ethics. I don't care what they say about law. At the end of the day, the example that you learned in your training institutions is do what insurance pays for. That includes medicine. So the next time you go to medicine to cut something out of your body, you better think about that. In mental health, most mental health clinicians don't even realize that they're being trained to do and treat in such a way that is dictated by the spiritual propaganda of the world, by the Antichrist spirit of the world, operating in those various systems. Lots of adultery, lots of idolatry. What a trick. I could have stayed there with my little girl. Who cares if I was in a one-room house? Who cares if I continued to stay in that little studio with my little girl? You think she cared? All that time lost with my little girl to go pursue a lie and all of the many idols, all of the many lovers of this world. And it's not as though I just step away from that and go, oh, this is wrong, let me step away. No, now it's got to be worked out of me. And that's what God's doing. He's working it out of me. All of that bondage needs to be broken. It's not enough for me to say, you know what, I did wrong, I'm sorry, No, now I've got to be placed in positions to demonstrate my faith and to demonstrate my choice because of the years of idolatry of money. And it's painful. Obviously, God created this situation for me this evening, for my eyes to be open, for me to be purified, made spotless, and refined in this area, and also for you to learn. So I hope that this was meaningful to you. I hope that it's helped you to understand the work that we need to be doing in our covenant on a daily basis. And also, when these things happen to us, like Peter said, don't be surprised at the fiery ordeal that's come on you. These things have to be worked out of us. It is not enough to just, when he says turn from your wicked ways, you're going to be placed in situations to make sure that you've made that choice, to make sure that you are demonstrating your faith where previously in your life, you spent a lot of time demonstrating your lack of faith. And oftentimes our utter rejection of having this sovereign God, of having a sovereign Father. What do we get to suddenly turn and say, whoops, well, I made a mistake there. I'd like you now. No, there's a healing process that has to happen in that relationship. And there's a covenant that needs to be worked out. And just like any good relationship, if you have broken someone's trust, you're going to have to prove yourself. It's not on the other person. A lot of times people like to say that, especially those that people like to define as narcissists, very self-centered people. They like to say things like, well, you have to give me an opportunity to prove myself. You have to. And the burden's placed on you to give them all of the benefits of being in relationship with you while they supposedly prove themselves. And usually they don't. They don't feel the need to prove themselves because you're giving them all the benefits. Well, in this relationship, God is perfect and he is going to require certain things of you. And you don't get the inheritance up front while you prove yourself. You get the inheritance at the end once you've proven yourself. I hope this has given you some things to think about and pray about. Please discern with God.